I get it. You have a ton of content to cover. You have a ton of content to cover, first of all, in a year, but even breaking it down to a week, it's a lot of content to cover. So the question is, why would you focus on language first before you focus on what you have to cover with the content? It's really quite simple. The way that we acquire language is pretty systematic and it doesn't change. However, our content could change from year to year. How often are you piloting a new curricular resource? How often are you looking at some new computer program for your kids? It's all the time. That is what happens in education. So when we start with language first, what that means is that we are picking our language targets, and those don't change. We don't change our language target based on the content that we're teaching. Our language target is our language target. We might have one, maybe two for the week. And so then, regardless of the content that we're actually teaching or even the curricular resource that we're using, that language target doesn't change. If you go the opposite way, you use your content to drive your language target and start with your content first. Well, first of all, you're going to have different targets for every content area. You're going to pick this out of math and this out of science and this out of social studies and this out of language arts. So you're going to have way too much to even begin to cover. And also, so say you do that and you plan it all out and you have your units ready to go. And then next year, your school or your district is like, yeah, we're adopting a new science curriculum or we're adopting a new language arts curriculum. And then all that hard work goes out the window. So if you start with language first and you have your language targets for the year identified and laid out, then as curricular resources come in and out over the years, it's not a big deal. You'll be able to find those targets in whatever curricular resource you're using. So once you learn how to shift students' attention between content and language, it actually happens super naturally and super quickly all the time in the classroom. The first thing you have to have are your language targets. So you have to know for the week what it is you're focusing on. If you're focusing on present tense verbs, then that's what's on your poster. That's what the students know that is the focus for the week. You've already launched that and taught that. So now for the rest of the week, as you're teaching the other content areas, math, science, social studies, and even language arts again, you can think about how can I quickly draw students' attention to the language target through the content. That's so easy. As you're teaching your math lesson and they're doing story problems, students quickly raise your hand and give me one of the 3 present tense verbs that I see in the story problem. 1, 2, 3, you're done. That took 30 seconds, maybe. In your science lesson, students, I see that we're going to do this experiment. Before we do it, I want you to take a highlighter and go through and highlight all of the present tense verbs that you see, or the commands, maybe if you're working on commands, something like that. These are all things that are drawing students' attention back to language throughout any content area. And it's done quickly and it's done seamlessly in the lesson. It's not stopping the middle of your science lesson and saying, okay, now let's have a grammar lesson on present tense verbs. It's not that at all. You've launched your week. You've told them what their language focus is for the week. You've done a little mini lesson to help them understand what it is and to practice using it. Now, throughout the rest of the week, what you're doing is you're just designing your lessons so that you are making sure that you're bringing their attention, regardless of content, back to the language focus. First, they're going to notice it, then they're going to practice it, and then they're going to produce it. So you're thinking about that throughout the whole week, and it should not take a lot of time. This is something that once you learn how to do, you will weave it through all aspects of your day. And the beautiful thing of what you're doing is actually really encouraging that metalinguistic awareness in developing their brains in ways that we know are so powerful. And that's why we have dual language programs, because we want those little bilingual brains in this world. And so this is one very tangible and easy way to do it, is to constantly draw students' attention to language structures while they are learning content. And once you learn how to do it, you'll do it all the time. In order to understand what a language target is, we first need to understand language features. A language feature is any characteristic of language. This is a broad term, and it can include grammar, word features, sentence structures, word order, language functions, or stylistic elements like transitions and connectors. In order to then understand how to have a language target, what we're doing is we're identifying first what those language features are that we need to focus on with our students. At Adalingua, we choose two. We have a grammar feature of the week and a word feature of the week. From there, we then select our language targets. And our language targets are a little bit different. It's the same focus. However, it's in student-friendly language, and it's designed so that students know what they are going to be focusing on for the week. That is their language targets. When students know exactly what to listen for, look for, and try during the week, they're more likely to notice and use that language. So let me give you an example. In Spanish, if our grammar feature that we're focusing on is noun-adjective agreement, within a possible language target that we would write up for our students and have in front of the classroom so that they would know all week what we were focusing on, would be something like describing words, adjectives, change to match the noun's gender and number. That's specific to Spanish. So that would be taking it from a grammar feature, the noun-adjective agreement, to student-friendly language targets so that the students know what their goal is for the week. So we are going to be focused on our language target is describing words that change to match the noun's gender or number, starting with language features and then getting that to a language target, which is in student-friendly language, is so important so that students always know what they're working towards each week. What are they focusing on? And how then they can point to it and find it when they are in all of their content areas. So where you find language targets is going to vary. Some of your curricular resources might have language targets, or they might actually have language features, which is the overarching feature that you're focused on, and might not necessarily have that language target in student-friendly language. But sometimes they offer that. Oftentimes, though, we have found in many curricular resources that they do not. They do not have a specific grammar or word feature that is the focus for the week for the students. So if you work with Adalingua, we have already predetermined that for you, grade levels, preschool all the way through 8th grade. But if you don't, that's okay. So let's say you don't have a curricular resource that identifies it, and you're not yet working with Adalingua, if you have a Spanish immersion program, to have that already predetermined for you. What you can start with is thinking about what are some of the common errors that my students make? And focus on those. That's a great starting point. Like, what are the things that you're hearing all the time that is a common error that really needs to be corrected? Now, the challenge of this is then thinking about it not only in the terms of your classroom and what your students are making a lot of errors with, but it is also about thinking about your system at large. So how are you working with your colleagues to make sure that every kid at your grade level is getting the same language focus for the week or for, the couple weeks, however you're structured, and then thinking about how to translate that into the next grade level and the next grade level and the next grade level. It's a big job. It's a big undertaking to really think that through. It's not impossible. But start with the resources that you have. Start with the language arts resource that you have if you're not working with us and have something pre-identified for you. And if you don't have something that has picked out language targets, then start with common errors. That's a great, easy place for you to start with your students. And that will help them get further down the road, because what you're doing is identifying what it is that is something that you want to teach and make sure that they stop using that incorrectly. Your goal is to increase their proficiency and understanding of the language so that they stop using that language incorrectly, instead of you constantly having to just correct. Now, that doesn't totally go away, but having very specific language features and language targets for your students will help alleviate some of that confusion and misuse of language.